Kenley Smith made his money in the high-performance and car racing world before selling his business to pursue a master's in playwriting at Hollins University. Now he's teamed up with the head of that program at Hollins, Todd Ristaw, to open Studio Roanoke, a theater space in downtown Roanoke on Campbell Avenue. Studio Roanoke is now also home to the improvisational No Shame Theater, which lost its venue when Mill Mountain Theater shut down. Smith became a regular at No Shame, which Ristaw originated several years ago, writing and performing short pieces in front of an audience of peers. At his new Studio Roanoke space, Smith named the building and the theater itself after his father and mother, Pete and Virginia. The board president has sunk more than $500,000 into the building so far, including the purchase price, without doing much to the upper 2 floors. That's in future plans. The recent home of New York Fashions was once a theater space many years ago for a brief time. Corporate sponsorships and grants are being counted on to cover most of the operating costs, which Smith estimated at less than $200,000 a year in 2009. Kenley Smith says he has a passion for drama and new works and is just a little bit crazy. Kenley Smith, welcome to the interview.
Thank you.
You have an interesting background. Before we talk about Studio Roanoke, you went from high-performance cars in the racing world to theater. Talk about the transition. Talk about what you actually did in the high-performance world.
Well, I ran a company called Car Guys, and we operated for 10 years in the Roanoke Valley. Interestingly enough, we actually didn't do very many schools in Roanoke. We were a high-performance training company that worked up and down the East Coast. So we would rent racetracks ranging from Watkins Glen, New York, all the way down to Sebring, Florida at different times. We also ran a program called Decisive Driving that had a special skid car where we could replicate all kinds of different handling conditions. And we did a lot of that work up in the Washington, D.C. area.
So you would actually take people out on these courses?
That was the idea. We offered on-track driver education. That was the slogan. So you would bring your own vehicle, your own streetcar, to a racetrack, and then we would provide the structure, the training, and an instructor riding beside you in your own car. So you brought the car and the helmet, and we took care of everything else at the track.
Interesting. Sounds like Watkins Glen would have been fun, the road course with your own car.
We always ran the long course there. So we would also run the little boot that the NASCAR guys don't do. Wonderful course, dynamic course, and terrifying because there's not a ton of runoff room there. So you're coming around these turns, and where, if you make a mistake, you're looking at 3 rows of baby blue Armco. So,
oh, wow.
So yeah, but a lot of fun when you really master that place.
And over the last, I guess, 10 years or more, you actually earned 2 masters also at the same time from Hollins University. Creative writing, and then recently one for playwriting.
That's right. The creative writing degree was way back in '82.
Okay.
So I was just recently an undergrad from Marshall University and came to Hollins to further the writing skills. Someone told me several years ago that, well, the reason you went into business was to avoid writing. And like a lot of writers, you find any excuse perhaps not to really get away from the drudgery or mechanism of writing.
As a writer, I understand that, yeah.
So that put the prose career on hold for quite a while. But what I really discovered within the past 10 years that I really had an affinity and facility for the dramatic form. Had always enjoyed writing dialogue in my other pieces. So when I took a class with Pat Wilhelms back, I believe, in '03, it really just kind of rekindled the muse. I'd sold the business by then and was ready to do something else. So that provided that spark. And I started going to No Shame Theater and eventually started performing there, and of course writing all my own pieces. And that led to meeting Todd Ristaw, and he was just starting his MFA program, the Playwrights Lab at Hollins University. And I went into the first class there in '07.
And the rest is history. And what possessed you to look at the New York Fashions building on Campbell Avenue and say, wow, that'd be a great theater space. I'm going to sink a bunch of money into this thing and turn it into an experimental theater space. What possessed you to do that? Was it something that always had been in the back of your mind?
No, but I have this alarming tendency to, if I get into something, I get in all the way. And what I really noticed was, I guess, a void in Roanoke at the time. was a venue that could really explore and develop new works. The Norfolk Southern Festival was still in force at the time.
At Mill Mountain Theater.
At Mill Mountain Theater. Looking for opportunities, particularly coming from the Hollins playwriting program. Because after that first year, I realized when this thing grows, we're going to have so many playwrights, so many different voices coming in. And just to have a venue where you can workshop these pieces, where you can find full production. Because as a playwright, I discovered early on, you don't know what you have until you hear it. Until you see actors take it, give it some kind of life, that's the test. You really, a good playwright, I think, develops the ear. And so you know immediately in workshop or rehearsal, okay, we have a problem, and you know where to go. But sometimes it really takes getting the thing up and moving and living. And I was looking for a venue that could really help us with that.
And one of the things I know you want to do at Studio Roanoke is also make it available for readings, not just full-blown plays, where people can come and read their plays and kind of hear what it sounds like out loud.
Well, number one, No Shame is a great venue for that. We don't get a lot of people who are actually doing excerpts and workshopping their longer pieces there. I'd love to encourage people to do that. I've worked scenes out occasionally there, and you get an audience feedback. You know if this thing clicks or not. Also, we have the Lunchbox reading series, where we do a one-act play free at, I believe it's on the first Wednesday of every month. And it gives folks in town a chance to not only have something to do on the lunch hour, but really gets folks a chance to see a play in some of the earlier stages of development. It may not be ready for production quite yet, but we can get it up, and at least we can give it some kind of voice.
How important, I know one of the things you kicked off recently, Kenley, was a capital campaign. How important is it for you to get the support of not only people coming there, but also corporate support of the local community, you know, people behind Studio Roanoke?
Oh, well, that's absolutely vital. We have to have a community to make this work. This is not some simple entrepreneurial vision. I mean, this really has to be a community effort. And it's kind of unusual in our case that we started with the theater, and then we're building around that. But we had the means and resources to do that early on. So we have a wonderful place to put these plays on, but continuing to develop that space and to find the capital to continue these productions. We're really working with minimalistic sets. We're cutting costs really to the bone just to get the essence of the play out there. So it's fantastic if we get audience, and we have to have people who are willing to invest something, whether it's time, energy, love, and money is great too. It takes
doesn't hurt.
So, well, even with our small plays, with this full schedule, we have 8 full-length, fully realized productions a year, plus the readings, plus the lounges, and the place is really not that often dark. We want to be very, lively and vital, and it takes a lot, especially if we're going to have any kind of staff there to really help run it and develop it and do this thing properly.
I have to let you go in a minute here, but you describe yourself on the Studio Roanoke website as a little bit crazy at times. Why is that? Is it for this type of venture, or just you like to try different things, kind of a daring personality?
Sometimes you have to say, what the hell? And Studio Roanoke is really that kind of venture. If you wanted to look at it as a business venture, it made no sense whatsoever. Theater makes no sense whatsoever. But it's the passion. Once people are in it, it's just this inherent, innate need that you have to express, to create, to perform, and really to share. Theater is so much about sharing. It's, again, being part of community, communication, and that's really the key. So sometimes it takes personality maybe just a little bit off-kilter here or there, and if people want to see me that way, that's fantastic. Whatever it takes to get this message out.
Okay, that sounds good. Kenley Smith, Studio Roanoke, thanks very much for coming on. This is The Interview. I'm Gene Marrano. We'll be right back.